Hello, welcome to Horizon Marmoris Session 10. It's been a while since last time, but getting started. Who wants to do the recap? You guys can feel free to fill in the blanks if you care to. If you don't care to, then don't worry about it. Dalian got the general gist. It's true. And so now you all find yourselves back on the ship in sort of a new situation now that it's sort of the cat is out of the bag in terms of your special status with regard to Balthazar. At least you don't know who else Balthazar may or may not have told about it in turn. So, sailing for Nassau, the crew has decided that they want to unload their cargo that they have been picking up through raiding merchant ships over the past couple of months. Resupply and find themselves in safer waters to spend that Ilgon coin. So the decision was to Nassau, off to New Providence Island. When the crew experiences quiescence over the course of the journey to New Providence Isle, which one of you caused it and what happened? Yeah, it's true. It's also sort of so quiescence. The sleeping curse sort of kicks into gear. That goblin in the back of your brain with a knife, when the sleeper becomes sort of aware of the impossibility of something. This isn't to take away from anything that you all have said with regards to whether Hall did or did uh, make the big Q happen, but so Dalian's magic's all quite subtle, as you mentioned, sort of conjunctions of fate or bits of perfect timing. But there's a certain threshold beyond which someone might look at someone who's seemingly grace given by God. Too many coincidences in a row, too many bits of luck, too many strokes of fortune in quick succession for it to be real or for it to sort of not draw someone's attention, not make them go, that can't be right. So that's when the sleeping curse could kick in. That is obviously harder than, causing an amalgamation of barnacles and wood to emerge out of spirit twilight. So I mhm. Okay. So, if we think that Hull caused the big Q, what happened? Mm, mm. So I think that probably based on Hull's Arcana spread, it was probably some sort of spirit-related incident. Perhaps things moving around when they shouldn't have, or yeah, sure. We'll call it that. So, she's on deck. She thought she was alone. It's probably not a big crowd that was watching, but I think that Paul sort of has to live with the fact that several of the crew, seem to have experienced sort of distress as a result of witnessing this. Stumbling upon her, I don't know if she's exposed anyone in the past to her magic, but she knows that sort of these three people on the crew, and I have names for them actually for once. What are their names? One of them's where's blank the drunk? There we go. Oh, Anselmo. Anselmo is the ship's resident drunk. We sort of witness Anselmo sort of having a bit of a breakdown into his cups as he finds himself sort of wandering around the deck at night, deep into his rum, as he does sometimes. Um, and I imagine that Hull spends the next few days sort of being a little bit on her toes, trying to ensure that Anselmo isn't reminded of the experience, because when something reminds Anselmo of what he witnessed, maybe barnacles or something, he seems to become very uncomfortable, which probably is Paul's first clue that sort of quiescence can relapse. Mhm. Okay. So over the course of the couple of weeks of sailing to New Providence Island, well, probably not a couple of weeks, more like a couple of days, you all have the chance to sort of, top up with another 3 points of mana, however much you have, up to your maximum, and do whatever preparations before landing in the storied seat of the burgeoning Republic of Pirates. Uh, Anything anyone wants to especially do before they hit New Providence? I mean, you have time to attempt to recast it. If you wanted to create some sort of shielding effect on her at the speed of narrative during the couple of days, I will say that you are perfectly capable of doing so. Okay, and specifically, this was a temporal or a shielding to sort of freeze her daemon into stasis, specifically. Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Anything from Hull prior to landfall? Okay, yeah. So, how did Dalian sort of figure out that he could do that? Okay. So is that what this new active death spell in your active spells is? Okay. Uh, go ahead and add an active spell for your Also, Many Faces isn't in your spell control, is it? It's in your artifacts. Yeah, I'll just mark it as safe relinquished, so that it doesn't count against your spell control. And if you want to add in your temporal shielding spell with whatever duration it has, and then you can click the unsafe relinquish button. Um, I don't remember what duration you were trying to give on it. Poss Weeks probably, or a week or something like that. Months then. Months just hanging out, with no way for Dalian to do anything about it now, as it's gone. And you do not have Prime. You do not. That's correct. All right. So that is noted. I will keep track of it and see what happens to it. As Dalian sort of, I imagine, given sort of the metaphors of threads and thorns, you sort of, pinch off the spell from yourself and then, let it go. Okay. Um. Okay. Um. And sorry, were you finished with your thoughts, Greg? Okay. 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 We'll have to talk about sort of what the spiritual life aboard La Rosa is at some point. But for now, it is dawn of a day. We'll say, the 14th of March. That seems like an auspicious day. As you all sort of, yeah, you come over, sort of, around the bend of, what's it? You come around the bend of sort of Cuba, and you find your no, sorry, the Great Bahama Bank, and you find yourself sort of inside of a smaller island, sort of at the edge of the horizon, forming out of the early morning mists, which your navigator informs you is New Providence Island, your destination. Over the course of the next hour or so, the ship approaches closer, heading towards what appear or what comes into focus as a very long, wide, sandy shore, with clutter all about it, sort of coming into focus out of the distance. A few piers, sort of haphazardly jut out from the beach, where a number of ships are coming and going and tied up, and the rest of the shore also seems to be sort of littered with abandoned ships, either being worked or, sorry, careened ships, either abandoned or seemingly worked on. It seems sort of like a hive of activity from, your possibly spyglass enhanced perceptions. Over the course of the, approach, Raul goes about sort of preparing the crew. You're all informed that, or actually, I think John in particular is sought out. Raul probably finds you while you're at the railing, perhaps watching the island, come closer. Uh, and he says that I know that you and Arnu are skilled in the ways of woodworking, and you've done much for the ship so far. There are many barnacles on the bottom of the ship, and La Rosa has, because of how long La Rosa has been at sea prior to us beginning this expedition, I'm sure you've noticed the deck worm, or what's it called? Hull worm? Yeah, the hull worm infesting some of the boards. La Rosa will need to be careened in order to be repaired. Will you help with this? Very well. We thank you, and our coffers especially thank you if we don't have to hire as many shipwrights from this viper's nest. Um, and with that, he will also go seek out. I imagine Dalian and Pascal sort of somewhere nearby, maybe together, maybe not together. But the given that the ship is being careened, as you're informed, the crew will need to lodge elsewhere for a time, since the ship will not be righted to be sleeping in their hammocks. That'll mean either sleeping on the beach or locating some other place where they're not going to get eaten alive by wild animals. So if you see anywhere suitable, keep an eye out. The beach is sort of the obvious choice for where to, have folks sleep when you've come aground before. But the beach seems to be quite occupied here, he says, with some sort of visible restraint, as if there's definitely another word which he wanted to use in place. There are a lot of folks there and a lot of objects there. You see, some very obviously abandoned, old, rotted, gutted ships that have had holes taken out of them either by cannon fire or scavengers looking to do some reduce, reusing, recycling. And there are almost as many sort of human figures that you can see. Some sleeping in these early hours of the morning, some sort of walking about, others engaged in some kind of recreation, such as one fist fight, which you can see. Um, yeah, it seems like a rough crowd, but there are lots of them, and Raoul sort of, if he sees a matching look of disapproval, will say, it's also the best place for us to find fences who aren't going to go running for the governor as soon as we roll in with unregistered rum. Um, yeah, and you land within within the hour. You are at one of the piers. The ship is roped up. The harbor master, such as he is a sort of friendly fellow who, no matter what expression he's making, always seems to be very interested in whatever he's looking at, even while bored. It's a talent which you don't quite understand, but thankfully you don't have to spend too much time interacting with him. Um, Raul goes off to go do sort of the logistics of figuring out, who to sell the stuff to, what needs to be done now that they're in port, and you all are at your own disposal. It'll be sort of a little bit before the arrangement is made to find somewhere to careen the ship and unload all of the cargo. It'll happen after the cargo's unloaded and all that, so John also has some time to himself before the work begins. Step aboard off the gangway. Yeah, the gangway, or not aboard. A land on land. There we go. Mhm. Further in from the actual beach itself, you see a number of houses, squat, quote unquote, houses, structures built mostly out of what seems like similarly repurposed materials. You see a lot of ramshackle structures built of sticks and canvas and repurposed boards and rope. A few buildings which appear to be properly made out of, wooden frames, but you see many of them sprawling, extending sort of inwards in this big, you know, ramshackle swath away from the shore. And even at this early hour, the sound of voices is loud. People bargaining and bartering and hailing each other, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of energy to the place, despite sort of the, how should I say it, ramshackle nature of the settlement. Beyond the buildings, the you see sort of the edges of the jungle to the left and right of where you're standing, sort of around the edge of the settlement. Obviously, you can't see through the buildings themselves, but the trees, seem to have been cut back, in order to make room for this sprawl. But the jungle exists back there still. What do you do? Yeah. So okay. Yeah. Certainly there's a high degree of resonance of well, actually, there's sort of an overwhelming and unified resonance, which or of sort of freedom, of sort of being unbound, uninhibited, unchained from your desires, sort of overlaid atop all of the more sort of prosaic material resonances, the sand, the canvas, the sort of more carnal resonance that sort of follows around some of the crowds of dancers who are, performing in public. Dancers being a euphemism for sex workers at the time. There seemed to be sort of large and very openly sort of displaying populations of young ladies who are relatively well kept compared to the presumably rougher figures around them, which you haven't seen in any sort of colonial settlement to this degree before. Um, yeah, so lots of canvas, lots of sand, lots of wood, lots of sea, and over it all, sort of almost layered like frosting, freedom resonance. From what Pascal can notice from the people themselves, he definitely notices that the eyes. Actually, give me a perception roll, Pascal, or a wits plus empathy, rather. Wits plus empathy. Yes. Explosion. Good. So Pascal notices something which is not at all hidden, which is that there is sort of a lot of plunder around and lots of folks looking for ways to spend it. There are also a lot of folks who seem to be very hard off and a pretty sizable spread between. The Despite all this, however, everyone seems to be sort of animated almost by the desire for more. And if Hull, sort of shares the spiritual emotional makeup that of what she sees, the sort of influence of this freedom resonance is very evident. All of that to be said is that there's lots of people, and they're all going about their business, whatever that be. One of the largest businesses that you can see, which is a proper building, is the Crimson Cutlass. You can read, for those of you who can read English, sort of has a proper sign on it, and actual walls made of wood, which makes it stand out from the surrounding buildings, especially because it is also 2 stories. Um, it appears to be a pretty bustling alehouse. Sort of. Oh, also you see a large fort to the north of you, along the left side, following the beach, which you would have seen earlier. Fairly decrepit looking now that you can see it in closer detail. Some cannons pointing out from it, but it is a large structure. With all of that rambling out of the way from me, what's next for you all? Um, if that requires a roll, then give me the roll. I think it'd probably be a finesse attribute plus crafts or ent plus crafts or something like that. Go for it. Okay, two successes. And but sure, go ahead. Ask your questions. Um, the folks you're with have expressed, admiration for the fact that it is, made of wood and has a frame, rather than sort of being a thatched structure like some of the other huts around. Um, but you can also tell that it's one of the most bustling sort of ale houses in around. You can see another one sort of off screen that does appear to be sort of a thatched roof sort of deal with canvas sides. There's folks in there. They're getting their rum even at this early hour. But this building, or this alehouse, the Crimson Cutlass, attracts a lot of people, and partly it is because of sort of the size of it and the fact that it is more comfortably constructed. It's not luxurious. It's not a manor, but it is a proper building where you can feel like you're out of the elements. No. Looking it over, you can tell that sort of despite the fact that it is, constructed of wood, is a well constructed building. There definitely have been patch jobs that need to be done on it. There are parts of it which, uh, part of the walls is clearly made of a different wood than the surrounding. Some of it appears to be slightly curved, as if it had, been taken off of the hull of a ship. And sort of the holes in it that do exist stand out to your eye as you look over, where weather and pests might be able to crawl through those little holes as you inspect it more closely. Governor Dalian. Um, there, or I will sort of say as you look over that you do see sort of ant-like figures moving along the walls and around it. There, it's clearly not abandoned, but you also know that if there was a agent of Her Majesty the Queen around, he would probably not make himself too available here in town. Which does leave the question that you don't necessarily know who is quote unquote in charge in this bastion of the nascent Pirate Republic. Mm. Um. Okay. Go ahead and give me a. How do you go about trying to find this place? Do you, just wander the streets looking? Do you ask? Do you? Okay. Give me. It's possible. All right. Give me a wits plus streetwise roll, and your specialty in pirates will apply. -2. Wow. Um, but that is enough. So the Crimson Cutlass is the most bustling alehouse in town. You can tell that there are definitely a lot of folk in there who appear to be plotting routes. Engaging it or sharing some scuttlebutt and gossip, bragging about conquests. It definitely is a place that is filled with pirates. But if you're looking for somewhere with a sort of rougher vibe, a little less sort of well behaved, you eventually do sort of locate a spot which is closer towards the fort. It's a big, essentially, it's just a large thatched roof. A large thatched roof on poles over an open space where uh, people are being served rum, sitting on barrels turned over on their side, sort of right up on the beach. And there is, in fact, a active fist fight occurring in front of it. It doesn't seem to be sort of a deadly, sort of aggrieved altercation. Rather, it appears to be to some degree sporting, but definitely without rules or niceties behind the competition. And you don't immediately see the name for this place. There's no sort of indications or demarcations. Um, while Pascal was wondering about, did the rest of you just sort of go with him, or was there any party splitting? Yep. So behind the bar is an older gentleman, you know, long white beard, very sun bleached, curled. Definitely doesn't oil his beard. It's sort of big and frizzy, and expands as it goes down. But he sees you approaching and He serves you rum because rum is what they got. They've also got grog, but no one ever wants that. Oh, it definitely is. Um, so now that you're here, what do you do? And is he trying to be surreptitious about his eavesdropping? Okay. Give me a presence plus socialize roll then. And that's enough. So I have to run to the restroom real quickly, but when I get back, I will tell you what you hear. Right. The local color. Go ahead, sorry. um, that's fair. All right. So as Dalian downs his watered down rum, he heads off. Meanwhile, Pascal and probably Hall to some degree sort of hear the local scuttlebutt. Essentially, there's a lot of talk about sort of goings on about new things happening on the island. Everything is sort of new here. It seems like it sort of came together very quickly once it happened. But there's been talk of a couple of names which you recognize being brought up sort of multiple times, namely Benjamin Hornigold and Henry Jennings, or Hornigold and Jennings as they're referred to. It seems like these two folks and their the flying gang, as sometimes they collectively are referred to, are the movers and shakers around here. Namely, you have folks like Hornigold going around regularly trying to, press gang, as they call it, the more permanent residents of the town into helping with secure the fort for when the British and French come calling, as they inevitably must, or sort of, shaking down residents for tribute, or for their fair share of the upkeep. Um, and there's a mixture of respect and sort of irritation at this imposition upon their the vaunted freedom that this settlement is supposed to be established on. Uh, but in any case, you get a sense of sort of the flying gang with Hornigold and Jennings being particular folks who are sort of the local folks to talk about, the people making things happen. Was there anything in particular that you were looking to sort of get out of your gossiping? Mhm. You also probably hear some sort of derisive statements about what few loyalists exist elsewhere on New Providence Island. You probably actually hear one pirate, a swarthy fellow, sort of bragging about having poured a mug of beer out of a second story onto that snake walker's son when he had the gall to last come to town for supplies to bring back to their homestead. Um, and through a little bit of listening and prying, it seems that Thomas Walker is the former, as they call it, lieutenant governor of New Providence Island, which includes Nassau. And now living in quote unquote exile, sort of on a smaller island, about 60 miles from Nassau. And Dalian. Dalian was headed back to the Cutlass, it sounds. Okay. Uh, Dalian walks in. As soon as he walks in, obviously it becomes darker due to the fact that he's indoors. Sun is streaming in through the windows, which are in fact made of glass, which is probably the first time he's seen those in a while since attacking the English settlement. And inside, there are big communal tables, sort of filled with folks. Some over maps, some over cards and piles of coin, and some just talking around their mugs. There's a long bar around the far side of the room, behind which is a sort of plump-looking woman who has sort of a quite plain looking yet severe face, who is tending bar. important clarification. Um, okay, she looks you over as you approach, and her sort of severe face, opens into a smile, which seems, like a customer service smile, but friendly enough, and asks, "What'll we be having, stranger?" Well, I've got some unfortunate news for you. Rum and grog are most of what we got, but give me a. So, she says that rum and grog is mostly what I've got. You look at the barrels behind her. They sure look like barrels in which someone has brewed grog, and you do see you know bottles that look like rum. But there's other things that you don't see sort of openly displayed. There's cabinets. There's a back room. Dalian probably knows enough to know that there might be reserves or something like that. If you want to get the good stuff, you could attempt to charm your proprietress through mundane means. I mean, like make her like you. Okay. Okay. And you are served your rum. It is in fact watered down, but maybe a little bit less than the other one. And it still tastes like something watered down as it is. You Yeah. You're served your small glass, and the proprietress, who at this point has introduced you to yourself as, or introduced her to you as Molly, asks if there will be anything else you'll be having. She nods. There are a couple rooms on the second floor of the ale house. They don't come cheap. Otherwise, there's the beach and the jungle. I can set you up for the price of, and she names a price, which is a little bit outside of Dalian's present pocket money. She notices your glance and immediately breaks out into the biggest, toothiest smile and says, "Well, may the cards favor you." And she turns away and continues drying a glass. Okay. Um, sure. How are you going about this? Just joining a game, identifying a good mark, and then trying to play your best. Okay. Entirely mundanely, or are you? Okay. Okay. How are you attempting to serve your own interests in this case or in this regard? Then, what exactly does Alien sort of do magically? Um. Okay. So to clarify, you're just going to rely on sort of your mage sight to attempt to give yourself an advantage. You're not casting a spell. Like a time or fate compelling. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm not gonna make you roll for it. I'm just gonna say that sort of Dalian, between sort of his active mage sight, giving him the ability to recognize, sort of tells more easily by sort of being able to tell when folks are about to act and matching that up with, them trying to suppress their instincts, etc., etc. Fate doesn't really give you anything that much, but through a combination of that and any active spells proper that Dalian casts, he manages to make enough to pay for a room for 2 nights. And obviously, mhm. um, so Dalian's, sorry, burping. Dalian, he casts his spells. He uses his mage sight. He manages to, get in a couple of good hands. He wins more than he loses. He doesn't have a giant pile of doubloons in front of him or anything like that, but he's done well enough. And at this point, he looks around. No one seems to be, looking at him askance, like sort of sharpening their knives or anything. But Dalian does get sort of a an odd feeling. It's not your peripheral mage sight, but he feels suddenly like he's being watched. And you wait for a little bit, maybe nothing particularly happens. The feeling doesn't resolve into anything. But okay. Molly is impressed by your obvious beginner's luck, since you said that you hadn't played the particular game you're trying to run again, and happily takes your money. You have a room at the top of the stairs for the next couple of nights. There is, in fact, a bed with a mattress filled with uh, feathers. Alrighty. And for the rest of you, is there anything in particular that John and or Pascal wanted to get in before you noticed La Rosa sort of being careened? Okay. Um, so time is it at 3? Yeah. So using sort of a combination of prime knowing spells, active mage sight, chatting about, you talk to about or several people at this bar with which has a name, but I haven't decided what it is yet. I might the Spit Bucket. It's called, and some of them. Sorry, the Spit Bucket. Actually, it's probably like the Spittoon. That's what they called it back in the day, right? Um, the Spittoon. And so yeah, everyone has lots of stories to tell about, strange things. Sailors, as Hall has probably become acquainted by this point, are notoriously superstitious. So some people will talk about how, a cursed, talk about a cursed coin which found its way going through their crew. Others will mention ghosts that they saw off deck during the dark watches of the night. And you encounter one or two people who very openly, or who will very openly tell you that their captains are possessed of magical powers that guide them to fortune and success in battle. And I think that for sort of dramatics purpose, as Hall sort of is walking around, are you sort of ranging about, or are you mostly sticking around the spittoon? Okay, and so as Hall sort of turns around a corner, heading maybe sort of on a bearing that is looking towards the fort. Hall sees something sort of existing, sort of resonating with her, supernal prime enhanced sort of vision. Something sort of hanging out about a particular shack, and it's not an active effect. It's not resonating with her peripheral mage sight, but there is something standing out. It appears to be sort of the residue of a magical effect. Okay. I'm not gonna. Well, with prime, yeah. Give me a gnosis plus prime roll. Oh, while you're rolling that up, what is Dalian's wisdom? Oh, yep. Using magic to accomplish something which you could do mundanely is in fact a act of hubris at enlightened wisdom. So roll 5 dice. Okay. Not exceptional, but Dalian doesn't drop in wisdom. Take an arcane beat from the act of hubris, and sort of how does Dalian sort of what? So Dalian sort of understands why that was not necessarily wise what he did as a result of the success. Sort of what lessons does Dalian take away from that? Mhm. Okay, cool. And so back to Hull. This is the residue of a nimbus that you see on this small shack, barely large enough for Hall to stand up in. There is a let me. There is the sensation of a tolling gong at sunrise, sort of resonating through the sort of leftover, nimbus of whatever was done here. There was another awakened here who did something. But looking about through the shed, you don't. Well, I mean, do you attempt to open it and go in? It's sort of a rickety door, sort of tied closed rather than any sort of proper lock, so it would be easy for you to do so, but impolite probably. Listening with your ears, you don't hear anyone sort of moving about inside the shed. It doesn't seem like a a dwelling place. In this, well, On the scrub and sand around you, looking up and down this quote unquote street, you can see people sort of within your eye shot, but no one sort of hovering immediately around you. Okay, let me just bring up what Nimb's 2 name does. Thank you. Uh, 4. Cool. So go ahead and roll your spell and let me know how much potency you got on it. Possibly. Let me see. Uh, you have one improvised prime spell already in your active spell control and one active spirit spell. I assume the spirit spell is. They're both level 1, so neither of them are the shielding that you mentioned. I guess delete them if they're not real. Okay, I've just removed them, so you might need to reload the spell calculator, or just put like a -2 into the paradox modifier, or reach. Okay, all right, that's potency 2. What do you want to know as you sort of stretch out and investigate this nimbus? The sort of tolling of gongs, sort of becoming louder and clearer in your sort of perception. Okay. They are Gnosis 3, and the obsession related to the magic left behind is uh the deep dark places. Truly. Um, yeah. So I imagine that sort of you get this information by way of sort of the gonging, forming patterns, forming rhythms or meters, and telling a story to you. as you listen to it. So I imagine sort of Hall's sort of standing sort of before this through people looking at him with mundane eyes, sort of standing and listening. Is there anything else that Hall does here? Or does Hall continue searching elsewhere for signs of the magical? Yep. No one answers. As I mentioned, it's sort of a very low space. It definitely doesn't seem like the ceiling is high enough for anyone to habitate in here comfortably for any amount of time. But yeah, so no one answers. Pascal, you have been asking a lot of questions over at the Spittoon. You are starting to also draw some attention as a result of your unfamiliarity to some of the regulars, and also you're trying to get the lay of the land. Eventually, some folks will start to talk with you directly and ask you sort of what you're about, what crew you're on, what's start asking you for stories, not accusatory, but trying to sort of feel you out. Yep. And you start to make some acquaintanceships. You learn some names. You hear some additional stories. Is there anything that Pascal was looking to do other than just absorb rumors? Hmm. Yeah. So at this point, it's 1714. The Republic of this, as they call it, the Republic of Pirates is new. It's basically just plopped right out of the between the legs of its mother and is squalling on the ground. There's still a lot of energy to it and a lot of idealism. The name of the game is taken as much as you can without before you end up having a armada of flagships sent to take you down. There's a sense of sort of, you know, obviously the same, freedom, unencumbrance, the ability to do whatever you want as long as you can back it up. But there's also an undercurrent of sort of some folks feel a sense of inevitability to the party ending, and will sort of express that in cagier terms, since they don't want to, spoil the mood, right? The French and the English have been cooperating in a manner that hasn't been seen before. They're sort of not as sort of at each other's throats, which some worry means that there could be more conflict with with colonial forces who don't have the distraction of a proper naval war with their neighbors to deal with. But for now, Pascal also hears plenty of rumors about silver laden Spanish treasure fleets coming back from the New World, topped up with their plunder and sort of the riches that fall to anyone who can intercept them. He also hears about shipwrecks of treasure ships sunken sort of off the coast of Cuba, where the silver and gold are there for the taking. So at a certain point, the La Rosa is, seen sort of coming up onto the beach, being, driven or pulled onto it with ropes, essentially. So that might be a good cue to Hull and Dalian that, or Hull and Dalian and Pascal that, the ship, will need to be worked on. This is probably more relevant to Hull than to Dalian and Pascal. But as Dalian is leaving the or no, sorry, I shouldn't make assumptions. What is Dalian doing after he lays on his bed in his new rented room? Okay, so as Dalian does leave the Cutlass, walking out the door, he is sort of hailed almost immediately from his immediate left. As he turns to look at the voice, he sees a a rather tall, dark-skinned woman, wearing obviously purloined finery, but who appears to be sort of dressed in nautical fashion. She is wearing what you would think of as piratey garb, but as she approaches you, she says, "Pulling on pulling on fate to fill your own pockets after first landing in port. Bold." And she has this sort of rictus grin as she's looking at you. She seems, or the immediate sense that you get from her is intensity and inquisitiveness, but not outright hostility at this point in time. But the very first thing that Dalian does realize obvious is that she could tell. And as they sort of stand there evaluating each other, we will go to our break. So, back in 10 minutes. So that would be 31 past the hour. Welcome back. We were on break, and now we're no longer on break. So, prior to going on break, Dalian had drawn attention to himself, and was now being confronted by a tall, dark-skinned woman with very white teeth, who recognized not only that Dalian had cast magic, but exactly what sort of magic it was. Um, so you and this woman are sort of, looking, or she is very obviously looking you over. And as she does so, Dalian sort of sees, that breaking of glass and thorns around her as his peripheral mage sight resonates with a active effect that coincides with her, looking you over. Sorry, what was that? Hmm. Um, yeah. So, she says, new to our shores, then, she says, with, sort of a voice full of intention. Well, welcome to the heart of the future. Um, you can call me Gull, Red Gull, and hmm? She, grins wider at this and says, of a sort. Um, my, or I think she actually says like, others of my legacy come from opiate traditions from prior to the awakening, but I was not. And she says this word legacy, which you don't recognize, but she says it in a way in which, hmm? Yeah, yeah. So actually, that's probably true. You probably maybe had a different term for it that you use with each other, but she clearly says these terms, awakening, legacy, in a way that means that she clearly expects you to understand what they mean. And does Dalian sort of betray, ignorance of or unfamiliarity with these terms? Interesting. Well, why don't we have some rum then? I know Molly keeps the good stuff out back, and she even, I hear, brews some gin. And she, walks past you, like, giving you a strong clap on the shoulder as she heads back inside. Meanwhile, the rest of you, uh, Hall, I assume, is heading back towards the beach. What is Pascal doing? Okay. Um, After a couple of minutes walk through sort of the winding streets, you find yourselves on sand. The ship is being actively careened. There's ropes sort of around the decks, and it's being very carefully lowered onto its side, exposing the firm, yet very vulnerable and very integral underbelly of the hull. As it lifts up out of the water, sort of, you can see sort of the almost, armor of barnacles along the bottom of it, and Hull's trained eye, either mundanely or magically, can very easily sort of spot the weak points of the hull, can spot the boards discolored and warped by the presence of moisture and vermin. Those that are clearly have already been boards that have clearly already been replaced. The legions of barnacles which will need to be scraped off. And Raoul, who's overseeing the proceedings next to Balthazar, is very happy to see Hall back, as is Arnud, who looks very much out of his element among all of these folks on the beach. Welcome back. Hope you didn't get too tipsy off of low quality rum. Raoul tells you both. Mm. Well, yep. You and Arnud have done this sort of thing before, though obviously not in a while. So you get back, you fall back into sort of old rhythms, which Arnud, you can tell, sort of is very happy to be back in something which is his element. Feeling useful, doing something, and also sort of being working, alongside you the way it used to be. The world is starting to make sense again for him. You can sort of tell based on your understanding of his emotional states. Is there anything that John attempts to talk about or address or bring up while working, or do they work in silence? Mm. Give me a uh presence plus crafts roll then. Surely. Ready. Um yeah, so John hasn't gotten significantly more skilled at carpentry since this all began. I don't think you've bought any new skill dots, but uh, Hall or John is being more assertive with it. John is sort of stepping up and rather than waiting for instruction, sort of taking initiative on uh, beginning certain tasks, doing things his way, expressing sort of his own personal style of carpentry without asking for approval or attempting to replicate our nudes. And I think that this will or so Arnud seems impressed, both impressed and also, very clearly takes note of the fact that John is, growing out of his shadow. It's hard to read how exactly he feels about it, but I think that this is worth a condition on Hall slash John. I'm thinking something like, I don't want to do the thing where you do a thing good and so you get a condition that helps you do that thing good again. But something more like the next time that John slash Hull, uh, you know, speaks their mind, that will be exceptional on 3 successes. Uh, yeah. Okay. So resolve, exceptional, exceptional success on 3. For speaking up slash speaking mind. Cool. And Pascal, is Pascal aiding with the labor or Standing around supervising or doing something else. Mm-hmm. Well, mm-hmm. While loafing off near Raoul, you hear Raoul sort of chatting with talking with Balthasar in sort of a low voice, and sort of ranting about you know snakes again, about how sort of the fence that he had contract or passed off a big chunk of their loot to was offering just absolutely usurious rates, but there was no better that he could find on this island, and also better than risking their necks dealing with the English. But he's clearly incensed about the state of the economy here. No, Balthazar seems thoroughly uninterested in the numbers. Like his eyes just sort of glaze over when exact numbers of crowns or francs are brought up. But he is looking, or you do catch him at some points, sort of looking directly at you, but then looking away when he notices you notice, and then looking back at Hall, and then looking at the fort. Okay. Is there anything in particular that you want to address, or just make small talk? Mm-hmm. 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 Um, Sounds good. Um, why don't you give me a presence and empathy roll? Mm, exceptional success. All right, that is exceptional. I think that we'll give you a condition, and also Raoul a condition. So I think that for Pascal, listening to all of this, absorbing all this information like a sponge about the dealings with since been on land have been really enlightening for him about how this settlement ticks, how it runs, who to talk to about what, and how best to get business done with a den of pirates rather than more genteel company. So we'll give Pascal the informed condition about Nassau. Oh, he something's up with him. You don't know exactly what, but he seems to be, as you've given him an ear, someone to talk to who does actually care about boring things like figures, he starts to become more animated and more sort of single-minded on wealth, on or discussing wealth, discussing numbers, discussing goods and wares, and the passage of wares from his hands to the next, to the point where he's talking faster than you've heard him before, and Balthazar looks slightly bemused. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mhm. Okay. Okay, so hinting that Sim. Okay. Um um yeah, some diving is certainly a possibility. Though Balthazar mentions that it is a dangerous and hard work diving, and the ship has no diving bell, which would make it easier, especially to bring up large amounts of booty. So, for context, a diving bell being uh, a large, yeah, he nods. Okay, and there we go. Copy, paste. Oh, nope, that's not what I wanted. Oh, whatever. I'll put it in Discord. There we go. For those who are unfamiliar, that is what a diving bell in this era would look like. And it basically creates an air pocket that moves down with the diver, so that they have somewhere to retreat to without drowning. Okay, so Dalian in the bar. You have sort of a more private table further back in the corner. As you walk in with Gull, Gull is clearly recognized. People, hail her. You might even hear one or two folks refer to her as Captain, um, as she, makes immediately for Molly. Molly greets you both. She doesn't seem, as warm towards Gull, but is very, respectful. And when asked about the good stuff, Molly brings out a bottle of a clear botanical smelling fluid or liquid from the back. So, sitting down at the table, Gull tells you that it has been a very, very long time since I've seen someone who, how would she put it, or met someone who has first set out on these waters. How long has it been since you awakened? And she's not yelling, but she's not sort of hushing her words, which might be unexpected to Dalian. Those Catholics. Well, 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 and already found yourself seizing, what this life has to offer to you. I commend you. Though, word to the wise, you're not the only one of the wise around here, and others may not take too kindly to attempting to rig their game against them. Obviously, the games are rigged. Check your card corners, but you will find yourself in good company here, friend. And she says the word company, sort of with a bit of emphasis. Is there anything that Dalian wants to say, ask? Oh, years. Years since I found myself in the hold of a slave ship, uh, surrounded by heat and disease, and found myself awakening through it. And years since I left the stifling confines of the Diamond Orders in which I found myself. Now I make my own fortune with my own crew, seizing what magic I can find. Mages have, or even the wizards, have their little social clubs. They have politics and parties and priorities, and they organize themselves. Back in Europe, um, if I wanted to claim a mystery, she probably calls it that exactly. If I wanted to claim a mystery, feed from a hallow, draw the mana from the world. Well, probably the hollow I wanted to draw from would be owned by the where did I put that? Owned by the Tiddly Fondlers at 325 or on 325th Street, and I'd have to speak with the rest, or speak with the wizards and mediate for access and deal with the imposition of societies. The Diamond Orders are one such organization of wizards. Good way to think of it. Yes, self-styled government of wizards who want to state when and what, or when and how we can use our magic. And on the other side, opposed by the Iron Pyramid, the slaves of the what they claim to be the gods above, who keep us in our place and hold us from awakening. Neither of them my speed. Both of them would try to take a cut of my booty, so I have no use. But here in Nassau, we know exactly uh, how unburdened our magic allows us to be, exactly how much the world owes us as a result of our ability to take it. And so we have a new order here, the Company of the Codex. Um, so is there, or so at this point she pauses, and asks, "So, young, a young whelp of a wizard, what do you want to know? Surely you must have questions." Oh, control, the simplest thing in the world. Empowered by their symbols of authority and rulership and tradition. They want control. Uh, hmm? The tyrants is what she calls them. Um, Honestly, couldn't tell you. I don't even know if they're real. All I know is that uh, their self-purported servants claim to have the run of the cage, as it were, this world, and their gods give them the key to the castle. What they want is uh, the subjugation of all the little folk like you and me who would rise above our station and take what we want. What they'll achieve is Nothing so much. Not while I draw breath. Mm. That catches her attention as she, her eyes sort of immediately focus as she listens to you sort of talk. And as you describe, your watcher, the prince, sort of in more detail, she, sort of loses that intensity of focus as it's clearly not what she was listening for. So she explains the concept of the supernal, of sort of, the realm above from which they, you and I look into, and we derive our power by drawing down its symbols. And that realm has residents, beings that who live there and who have their own purposes here on the earth, in the phenomenal world, and sometimes they make themselves known. What it wants, what I wants, yeah, small gods, a good way to think of it. Um, but what it wants, I don't know. Maybe you'll figure out. But whatever, I would tread carefully. They want things in a way very different from what we want. They have, they are not human. They have their own desires and priorities, but great knowledge of the world, worlds above and below, which relate to their purviews. They can even be drawn down into the world by a summoning. Um, what is her nimbus like? What does she look like? Who is she affiliated with? Yes. Well, I've seen uh, Red Gull. I think she'll respond that, well, I've seen many uh, an Eastern woman before in the world, but I don't recognize this particular woman. And she looks you over and says, "If you want to find her, why don't you simply will that it be so? I've seen you cast at least one working upon your own fate." Uh, this gets well, actually, that's not surprising, right? Like you have to have come here on a ship, and you didn't apply that they or imply that they were awakened. So she's like, she shrugs and says, Best advice that I can give you. Did you or how did Dalian introduce himself? Did he tell her his name? Yep. Uh, one piece of advice I'll give you for free, Dalian. Don't be afraid of your power. If you want something, take it. If you desire something to be so, will it. Don't be timid the way that the nannies over in the old world would have you be. And but if you would like to find some agreeable company, join up with a group of wizards who are taking what they want and deserve from the world. Come find me. You can ask for Captain Gull at the fort. I'm in tap. I'm in port for another few days. This gets a loud laugh from her as people turn to look over at your table. Says, "No queens for us. Ni dieu ni maître. No gods, no masters. But I am a capable sea captain, a capable will worker, and I others listen to me. As I said, you may ask for me if you want to join up. If you want to find a way to access the real booty, learn where the real plunder is, not just the gold and jewels and doubloons and rum and bolts of fabric, but the mysteries." And she leaves and she takes the bottle with her. Alrighty. The others are probably sweaty and wet and sandy and taking a break from their labors on the beach. Night is falling at this point, probably. The sun is starting to, or the sky is turning dusky. The sun is dropping towards the tree line of the jungle beyond Nassau. Shadows are getting long, and you all find each other again. And Pascal will probably remember sort of that those rumors and chats that he had with pirates, sort of at the spittoon, sort of very openly speaking about the fact that, yeah, my captain has powers, which maybe doesn't square with the uh, cabal or the company's experience so far of quiescence or of the sleeping curse. Um, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but something like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, the boat is presently on its side, so that would be difficult. It's possible. You could. Right. So you head back to the Cutlass, John stays at the ship. You are certainly capable of actually sleeping on the ship itself. It will be uh, either a matter of getting a hammock set up or sleeping on the sand next to it. But you make your fire. It seems that Arnud has sort of the same idea. So it's also nearby. You don't know where sort of the Balthazar has gone, but there are other crewmates who have set up on the beach nearby, have a fire, rum. Uh, Meanwhile, at the Crimson Cutlass, it's even rowdier than it was during the early afternoon. The place is packed. Folks are loudly and gregariously sharing stories of their exploits, trading rumors, cursing the English, all the normal pirate in things. Do you head right to bed then? Okay. The floor is less comfortable than the bed, but the bed itself is also quite thin as far as mattresses go. Still, it's not made of hay and it's not a hammock, so I imagine it feels quite like heaven to Dalian. Hmm. And you have it for another whole night. Um, the next morning, the morning dawns. Sun comes up. It's actually a relatively overcast day, which is very out of keeping with normal Caribbean weather. But clouds in the skies, thin cloud cover that sort of diffuses the light and makes sort of everything very bright rather than making it dim. Um, Hurts your eyes somewhat until you get used to it. But I imagine you find each other. What's the plan for the day for the company? Okay. And yeah, that's fine. You just do so. I'm not gonna make you roll for it. And I assume you guys meet up at the Cutlass, since that's where two of the three of you are staying. What's okay? Sure. Um, you meet up. Some of the seamen are still not stirring despite the brightening day. A little too deep into their revelry in their cups. You hear some groans. You witness some folks relieving themselves. You see others, preparing breakfast over open fires. Um, it's a big old beach party, in some definition of the word party. What's the plan for the day? Um, Sounds good. Let's take a 5-minute break so I can organize my thoughts a little bit, and then we will go right to that. I will be back in 5. left. And I can pay attention to you. All right, I am back. Hello. Um, okay, cool. So, it's early morning. You make the walk up to the fort. You aren't the only ones who, you can see along the sandy, dusty road walking up to the fort, but it's by no means a sort of big train of folks. Maybe you see a handful of other people who are coming or going from the fort at this hour. You don't really see anyone sort of stirring on the walls of it, ruined as they are. At this distance, you can definitely see sort of the disrepair of the place. It's not, an ancient ruin, but it clearly hasn't had TLC in a little while. You walk up to the wall, or not the wall, the door. It's a large and relatively sturdy-looking wooden door, about the height of probably two people. But it is, or one of the halves of it is presently open. You walk in, and there are folk at work, it seems, or milling about. Some people carrying material around, others sort of lounging about, eating breakfast, or into their morning rum or coffee. But no one you see who seems like a secretary or to stand out as being, in charge. The inside of the fort is a relatively uh, oh, it's a pale yellowish stone. It's not exactly maze-like inside. There's a big central courtyard that you seem to have walked into, with hallways leading into the buildings proper and stairs leading up to the walls. What do you do? Yeah. So it's a woman. Probably I'd say she seems to be a little bit soot stained, a little harried looking, possibly a kitchen worker, and her eyes widen a little bit when you say you're looking for a red gull, and she seems to panic a bit before regaining her wits, and giving you directions through one of the side hallways, and then to the left. You seem to be heading towards the center, or it seems like that would take you towards the center of the sort of complex. Okay. Opening up your spirit sight, you see, the normal or the obvious resonance from what you could see with your mundane senses, sort of stone spirits, cannon spirits, a little bit of, or not spirits, sorry, resonance, but sort of a generalized resonance of, you know, anticipation of something just on the verge of being edged towards something happening, but um, not yet come to fruition. Okay. Yep. All right. So walking down the darkened hallway, your eyes water a little bit from the smoke of candles and torches as you head in. There's it's a proper fort, so there's long dark hallways, a little bit of natural light, but it's probably the first time that you've seen a proper stone constructed building in a while, or experienced the dark cave like darkness. You find yourselves in front of the aforementioned door. It's at the end of a relatively long hallway, and it has a gull carved into the door, easily enough. Or do you knock or barge in or okay? Enter. You hear that same voice from yesterday retort. Okay. So inside of this, relatively larger space, 200 square feet-ish, maybe 300 square feet-ish, you see sort of a riot of colors occupying this otherwise staid interior space. Tapestries and fabrics and carpets, of all garish and bright color, sort of hanging from every wall, covering the floors, sort of suspended from rafters, and uh, with bookshelves sort of surrounding all of the wall or all of the open walls. Rather than books being stored on those shelves, however, you see a large variety of sort of instruments of sample jars with some substances in them, taxidermied or otherwise preserved animals, models of the human body, and a desk behind which sits a tall, dark-skinned woman wearing equally garish, bright colors. And she gives her traditional or he she gives her characteristic grin as she watches Dalian or sees Dalian come in, and then raises an eyebrow as she watches the two unfamiliar figures come in behind Dalian. So, brought some company, did you? Oh yeah, that's also true. So she probably looks up unknowing at you and then squints for a little bit, and then you know eventually she'd get the picture unless you're trying to pass off that you're a different person. Hmm. Um. Oh, decided to take up my invitation, and in such a timely manner. Very polite. And you've brought some friends. Well, welcome. Go ahead. It's true. I did encounter an exercise of magic by someone whom I didn't recognize. As many gentlemen, gentlewomen, gentle folk of fortune as count themselves in the company these days, it's always a rare surprise to encounter a new will worker in our midst. And you also are awakened, I assume, by the fact that your friend here has brought you a good name. Um, and so, unless yeah, so I guess the first thing that she would ask is for you to tell her a bit about what you have done so far, what your lives have been like since awakening, what deeds you've accomplished. Men and women after my own heart, then, taken from the English. Always a good pastime for everyone in Nassau. Um, and you've been alone this whole time, by yourself, surrounded by the sleepers, neither joining with the diamond nor the pyramid. And this is phrased as a question. Those who still suffer beneath the sleeping curse, what you once were, those whose minds precisely. Sleepwalkers. We prize those for our crews, since we can work magic in front of them without breaking their little minds. Um, or breaking their minds, rather. She probably doesn't say little. Good. Yeah. um, good, good. So that's a good question. I'm no Alethian. I'm not a philosopher who studies awakenings themselves, but from what I understand, it requires a certain fortitude and a certain obsession to see past the rotted skin of the world and refuse to accept its non truths. You all must clearly be of that sort, as well as all the rest of the awakened who take part in our company. Um, if you desire, you can meet others of them, but allow me to congratulate you on what you've done so far, despite being untrained on your own, but possessed of exactly the correct instinct, which is desire. Desire to take what others would keep from you, to better your own lot using your capabilities and the unscrupulousness enough, or the success. That's not what she would say. I should say, and the yeah, the ruthlessness. Um, so here in the company, we live by a simple code. A code, not laws, not edicts handed on from high, but a code, um, that freedom itself, the concept and the reality is itself magical. Uh, you know what they call us, eh? Over or back in Europe, hostis humanus generis, enemies of all mankind, to be hunted and murdered without respect to prior jurisdiction. But we live outside their systems. We refuse to be bound by the laws of the old world, and we take what we want. In fact, we take from the power, or we cut down the power of authority itself within our waters. I don't. So out of character, I don't know that any of the or any of the player characters would have noticed or attempted to use such a yantra. But any none of them have tried to use any yantra sort of relating to authority or tradition or anything of the sort. So you wouldn't necessarily know what she's talking about. But the semiotic, yeah, she might, would she use that word? She'd probably use that word. Sort of the semiotic power of authority within company waters is itself weakened supernally, metaphysically, more than magically. and so therefore they are able to live more freely from mages who would attempt to use such uh, magics to bind us. And she'll sort of amusedly sort of explain the terminology. Not amusement in the form of like, oh, what rubes, but oh, I can't believe I have to, it's been so long since I've had to explain these. It's true. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so that's something that certainly she would start doing in order to sort of translate between that and the words in. I imagine she's speaking English in order to help you better understand. Since you have used these sorts of things, you've used yantras before, but you didn't know what English mages called them. Um, so this is a democracy of wizards. Every mage a vote, every mage a voice. All sworn to the codex are equal under the codex, no matter their origin. I Whether you awoke within the belly of a slave ship or found yourself, head of your own crew before you awoke to what was beneath the world. We Yep, similar to a pirate ship, captains are voted up from among common mages, and some crews have more than one will worker. Um, and the two most important, or the two next principles are that we take all we can. You've lived a pirate's life so far for at least a couple of months. You've taken plenty. But you've probably never thought after killing the governor and sending his wife out into the jungle and gutting his animals of settling down and running the plantation yourself to farm some sugar cane and then send it back off to England. No one in the company will stop you from taking what is your due, but usurp nothing. And thirdly, the casting of magic before sleepers is the snap of a gun in the hold. Maybe you've seen this before, but uh, sleepers are volatile. The shard of the abyss within them corrupts magic that they see and notice. They are numerous, and it's impossible to avoid them entirely. But like firing a pistol within the hold of a ship, you risk exploding the powder within it. You're not company mages. You're not one of us yet or now. But were you to join us, were you to want to count yourselves among our number, among this grand experiment of democracy among mages, we would consider having you. There is a initiation. There is an expectation to identify possible enemies of the company who may be attempting to infiltrate our numbers. But there is room and there is support, especially for those who are just beginning their journeys. Well, that depends on your ship, your crew, your captain. I don't, or I'm gonna say that Dalian probably hasn't, or maybe hasn't provoked quiescence before, but would be familiar with it, especially from Hull's story. You'll find some ships have captains who openly work magic, who openly claim themselves to be wizards, mages, miracle workers. Even they are careful to send all of their crewmates or crew members who have both their eyes closed instead of half lidded down into the hold before doing so, shall we say. Um, Smart girl. Well, um, do you have other questions for me about the company of the Codex, about the world we live in, about yourselves? The Codex is an artifact. The Codex is also a concept that is our way of life. Um, the Codex is what allows us to live the way that we do, rejecting magics which would bind us to codes of laws, either of men or of gods above. You may learn more about it. And with that, we are at 10 minutes to the hour. So I think this is probably a good point to stop so that Scrag can get to sleep. All right. Well, yeah. Alrighty. I will stop the stream then. Thanks, everyone. Take care. And we'll see you next time.